Welcome back, tankers. I'm Ash Friday and welcome to another quick tank review. And here it is, the one everybody wants, the E-75. One of the strongest tanks in the game, tier for tier, in terms of armour. An absolute beast if played correctly, and it's taken me a while to get this review out. A lot of people have asked for it, but I really wanted to get that replay that was just so you could really see what this tank can do. And by just so, what I mean is a replay where I abuse some enemy E-75s. Played correctly, this tank is very strong, but played incorrectly, even though it's got oodles of armour, it can be taken down fairly easily, and I'm going to show you that in some gameplay. Right, so we're going to talk about the armour properly using tanks.gg in a minute, so we're just going to go into the packages, talk about the grind now. The stock tank is pretty appalling. The gun won't do anything for its tier, although you could do some damage. The grind on this tank is not that fun. It uses a variety of the Tiger 2's guns, but you go up a tier. So although the Tiger 2's guns, the gun handling's great and the penetration's not bad for tier, you step up a whole nother tier. It's when you get to this point you start getting the better engine, the better tracks, which you're going to need because this is a heavy old tank. It's not far off 70 tons. So you really want some big engines in this thing, where you get the big Maybach HL234 1200 horsepower, and this thing starts to move around fairly quickly considering its size and its weight and the amount of armour it's got. Anyway, it just gets better as you go up. You get a slightly longer version of the KWK. That's a L52 short barrel version, then you go up to the long barrel 10.5cm one, so still with a 105. And when you get to this point, you get the big strong turret, and also you get the big strong 128mm cannons. The length is not great. Normally with a short barreled gun you do lose some gun handling, which is true. You don't have the epic accuracy and just all round good gun handling that you had with the top package Tiger 2, but what you do have is some huge alpha damage and decent penetration. So let's have a look at the top package. So there we go, there's the Maybach 1200 horsepower. That gives you a track traverse of only 21 degrees a second, which I would recommend you bump up with some crew skills, but I've not long bought this tank back, so I've not played enough games to get enough crew skills for me to get clutch braking and off-road driving yet, but I will be doing them very soon. Anyway, we'll talk about crew skills in a minute. So onto the gun, the 12.8cm KWK 44 L55. It only does 3.82 rounds per minute to less than 4 rounds per minute. Obviously you can bump that up with some equipment and crew skills, which I heavily suggest you do, but penetration is pretty good for tier. 246mm of penetration and 490 alpha damage. That is banging. APCR penetration is 311 and the same alpha damage, and HE pen's pretty weak at 65, but you still want to carry a couple for dealing with those pesky Borsigs, Waffenträger, stuff like that. And the alpha goes up to 630, so if you do catch hold of one of those things, you can quickly make their hit points disappear. On to the two worst stats about this gun, and makes it completely different from the Tiger 2. Aim time is 2.9 seconds and accuracy is 0.37. Come on man, this is a German tank. That is appalling. But if you are in someone's face, that really makes no difference. And that's how you can play this tank. Onto the turret then, pretty strong. We're going to talk about that in the armour model, but it only does 18 degrees a second, so that's even slower than the track traverse, and that is appalling. But view range is good at 400, meaning with a decent crew, you're not going to want to take optics on this tank because you definitely need other pieces of equipment, but you're still not going to be one of these blind Russian tanks that can't see in front of its own face. Anyway, so that's enough of that. Right, talked about crew skills, so I bought this back a while back and put a fresh crew in, but already I've managed to get 6 cents, which you want on any tank, then bruvs and arms because of the reload, and then on this tank I went for repairs and track mechanic. Right, so if you're side scraping this tank, you're going to get your tracks blown off a lot, and a good tier 10 player, they'll blow your tracks off and then drive round you. So all you can do about that, if you haven't got a repair kit left, is hope your repairs and track mechanic get your tracks on quick enough to get your armour turned around and hopefully fight them off. So that's why I've taken those two. Next skill I'm training is Snapshot. That's to help with the accuracy and the aim time during turret rotation, because the gun stats aren't that great, so that will really help. But after this I'm probably going to go for clutch braking and off-road driving, just to make this thing a little bit more mobile on soft and medium grounds, because it really does feel like a heavy tank, this one, which is surprising because of the engine power. Anyway, so there we go. Not a particularly skilled crew because I not long bought this back, but I'm glad I did. And you can see I've got 1 gun mark and I'm going for 3, and I will be doing a diary on this tank. Right, so you can see on the bottom there I've got a few other tanks highlighted from my garage. The Tiger at tier 7. This was one of the highlights of the line for me. Excellent gun for tier. It's only an 88, so it doesn't do much alpha, but the reload's awesome, the penetration's awesome, the accuracy's awesome. So make the most of the tier 7 tank. It's just a big box of hit points. The armor doesn't really work. The tanks this thing was designed to work against are at tier 5 in the US tech tree. Yes, I don't expect the armor to work too well. Tiger 2 at tier 8 was good, although it just didn't have the DPM to be able to kill things quick enough. And then you get the E-75, which we're going to look around. And then it's a bit of a disappointment at tier 10 afterwards, really. I would rather use the E-75 in a tier 10 game than the E-100. But I'll let you find out for yourself. And also the mouse, the other top of the tree on the other line. I'd rather use the E-100 than the mouse. So I'd definitely rather use the E-75 than the mouse. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Right, equipment for this, not got any fitted at the minute, but I would definitely recommend large caliber tank rammer, ventilation and vertical stabilizers. Just standard consumables and just an average ammunition loadout. I do carry a decent amount of premium ammunition. If tier 10 vehicles fire premium at me, I'll fire premium back at them, just because that's what I do. But it's up to you on your own ammunition loadout. If you want to make more silver, you use less premium. So it's entirely up to you. Right, just last few of the stats then we haven't looked at. Very healthy 1920 hit points, that is plenty. Speed limit of only 30, but with a 1200 horsepower engine, it does get there quick and maintain it over rough ground. So although the track traverse isn't great, in terms of mobility, it's average. It's not bad at all. Right, and the camera value is low, but who cares? It's a heavy tank. And that's it, fellas. Right, now we're going to go into tanks.gg to have a look at the armour, and then into an Ace Tanker replay. Right, so here we go, tankers, looking at the E-75 using tanks.gg, a very helpful website. I suggest you all go and look at your tanks before you take them into battle and see how you can make the most out of your armour. Right, straight into it then. Upper plate 160 brings up some very large numbers, even without angling. Even tier 10 heavies and mediums that are not firing premium rounds will not be able to go through the upper plate. Lower plate's a little thinner at 130mm, but still brings up some fairly impressive numbers. If you get caught out in open ground, if you angle this tank about 20 degrees, you can bring up well over 270mm up to nearly 300 on the upper plate, and the lower plate between sort of 240 and 242 on the lower plate. So that is enough to pull off bounces against most tanks you can meet, apart from tier 10 tank destroyers, and that is of course if you get caught out in open ground. Right, so we all know heavy tanks are good at side scraping, and the E-75 is one of the best. So let's set this tank up about 20 degrees, which is what you want to set it up at, and I'll tell you the reason for that in a minute. Right, so let's get the turret round, set it up, and there we go. Might just change that a little bit. Right, so if you set your tank up about 20 degrees, your whole of your side armour becomes absolutely godlike. Yeah, so that is well impressive, very, very impressive. So you're probably thinking now, why Friday have you set this tank up to show some of the front plate still? Well, we'll check this part of the front plate out. 270 to just over 280. So not bad at all, even though we're exposing some front plate. So the reason I suggest exposing that is because the front of the turret is 252mm thick, but it's not very well angled, so the actual effective thickness is only just slightly over the actual thickness of the metal. So if you've got 250 here, you'd much rather trick the enemies out and think they can fire at your upper or inside of lower plate here than at the actual easiest pen, which is going to be the front of the turret. Tier 10s with a decent pen roll, well, and a lot of Tier 9s with a decent pen roll can go through the front of this turret, and all Tier 9s and Tier 10s firing premium rounds can definitely go through the front of this turret. So you'd much rather they had a poke at this area, which is actually a lot thicker, and that is my reasoning for telling you 20 degrees. And also with 20 degrees, the whole of the side armour is an instant ricochet, and also the side of the turret at this angle is an instant ricochet too. Right, so let's set the tank up back to normal. Let's put the turret around the front. Come on, there you go. So we said the front of the turret's 252, the gun mantlet is a huge amount of spaced armour and makes the figures absolutely ridiculous. Side of the turret's 160, but the angling makes them an auto ricochet. And also the turret, it's only top of the turret, it's only 60mm, but at that angle it's an auto ricochet too. And there's no normal tank in the game that can totally overmatch that. There is artillery rounds that can totally overmatch this area, but then if you get hit by artillery, they're going to ruin your day anyway. The biggest problem from this tank at the front, and people will aim at it straight away if they've had problems with dealing with E-75s in the past, is the cupola. It's a mixture of 160mm and 130mm, so even Tier 7s firing premium rounds have a good chance to penetrate this. Right, so now what you want to talk about is side scraping. If you can side scrape a left hand corner, so you've got the wall down there, well it would be about there with the turret out to the side, and the actual walls here, your cupola is covered. You can't always do that though, so if you're side scraping a corner that way with the wall here, and you're exposing your cupola, you just want to rock backwards and forwards, or even just push out for your shot, let it go and then pull back, and try and give them the least possible chance of aiming at this bad boy. And that is it for the front. Onto the sides then. Sides of the whole 120, but they do have a little bit of space with the track armour here. I thought this was space, but it's not. It's just 120 thick, so that's where you want to aim if you're using heat. If you're using AP and APCR, you want to aim well there, and you can aim here as well and get tracking shots and do damage, which you can't do with heat, which is annoying. Side of the turret lens 160mm, but with no angling. It's quite an easy pen, but even at weird angles, this turret does pull off some huge numbers at the back, not so good at the front. Right, on to the back then. I think it's 120 on the back, yeah, so the numbers aren't that big there, but again at weird angles it pulls off some fairly nice numbers. And the back of the turret is a mixture of 160 and 100, so light tank drivers, you want to smash its back doors in. With most tanks it's got some very large areas for artillery to ruin your day, but also you want to be careful with tanks that are above you, because they're going to be able to, most tanks with 120mm guns and above can totally overmatch this armour, and they can penetrate you from any weird angle if they're above you. One other point then, if you're side scraping on some ground which is not completely level, say your front end of your tank is a bit dipped down, that 40mm plate there then becomes exposed. So again, tanks with 120mm cannons or more can totally overmatch that, and they only have to whiff it to get the penetration. And there you go. So just be careful about that. Also, another point, your lower plate, if people are face hugging you, that increases the angle of the lower plate, so don't be too worried about that. What you want to be worried about is exposing your lower plate at range, because the further a tank gets away, it effectively reduces the angle on the lower plate gradually, and then it goes from being fairly strong to fairly weak, so just be careful about that. Right, there we go fellas, that's the armour model, it's pretty strong. Last thing to talk about is the gun depression. So I'm going to set the tank up here. Right, so you have 8 degrees most of the way around, which is really good for a Tier 9 heavy. So there we go, 8 degrees most of the way around. But at the front there's this tiny little patch of 6mm. So if you're fighting over ridge lines, you don't want to be driving straight up to get your gun over, because you're going to lose 2 degrees of gun depression. So what you want to do is just even a few degrees side to side going over the ridge to get your full 8 degrees. And also at the back there's a massive area of 0 degrees, so be very careful about giving your ass to something like, well, a light tank of any kind, because there's a very good chance he's going to be below your gun line and you won't be able to do anything about it, so just be very careful about that. Well, there we go fellas, that's the armour and the gun depression. Now onto some gameplay to see how this thing gets along. Right, straight to the replay then. I've cut out the start because you're just driving up the hill on Dragon Ridge. Yeah, not the best of maps for the E-75 because of the armour values. It is okay as an open country tank. You just got to be very careful about letting people get round you. Right, so first target then, one of the enemy's E-75s. We aim up his lower plate, but we just get a crit, so it must have just swung off to the side and caught one of his tracks. There we go. Take it in return, and it bounces. Tried scoping a shot on his lower plate again through the wall, but he must be behind a little bit of cover there, so maybe we're not going to get any damage off him at the minute. There we go, there's another one. No shot on him. And we aim up on someone behind, but the E-75 just drives forward enough after I'd fired for the round to scoop into his turret. And you can just see there, having your turret to the side, and the shot went in. There we go, aiming up the cupola of the other E-75 there, and it goes straight in, even from this range. So that's why I was saying in the armour viewer, people will go for the upper plate, so not the upper plate, the cupola, if they haven't got a decent shot on anything else. If I was to load a premium round, I could just aim for the front of his turret and hope it doesn't hit his gun mantlet, but I don't want to do that. Well, it's moving into position there, and some IS-8s have got very brave. That play would work if we didn't have anybody over here, but I am here. There we go. First one gets taken down. No, he's not dead yet. Am I going to try and finish him off? Bingo. First kill on an IS-8. Now we're going to have a go at his buddy. The accuracy on this gun was at .37. It's not great, but from this range it's good enough for that amount of penetration. Was it 248 pen, I think it was? They found us. Enemy is hit. So I'm just holding my position. There's no artillery in this game. Bang, second IS-8 taken down. Well, who's next? A tier 7 heavy tank. This was really not fair. T29, but it looks like he's backing out of it. Can we scope a shot? Didn't quite judge that amount of cover there. Well, now we're going to help out one of our buddies here. There's a Freedom here. He's having a bit of drama with an E-75. Right, so here we go. Backs off at an angle. I aim in the very left-hand corner of the lower plate and it pens. Just maintaining my angle, moving backwards and forwards. There we go, bounce. Enemies looking right at us. Bang. There we go. You just keep this thing over angled if you're trying to bounce from the front. Move backwards and forwards, and they'll either bounce. Well, they might roll high with their penetration and go through the lower plate, but normally they will just bounce or hit your track or give up and aim at your cupola, in which case you just keep moving. Right, so still plenty to do in this game. Although we've taken out 3 tier 9 heavy tanks, there's still plenty of work to do. And we're still on full health. Oh, who's this? There's another one. Hey, that's 4. Right, while this was all going on, I could see on the map there was 2 heavy tanks who must have flanked around completely through the lower part of the map here, and they're going to pop out behind us in a minute. If I hadn't noticed that, they could have quite easily poked around this corner, got a load of flanking shots into our guys, and completely changed the balance of this game. There we go, there's an M103 aiming up for his lower plate, and that hits. And we got a crit as well. I don't know if that was a track or maybe his ammo rack. There we go, just side scraping off this dead tank, and he bounces. But we don't. Happy days. And another bounce. He's not fully upgraded, he's got the stock 120, so he's still got decent pen, he just doesn't have the accuracy. Right, so push around on him, he lures me into a bit of a trap. There's another E-75 here, and we get the first shot into him. Back out an angle. It doesn't do anything. There might have even been a high explosive round maybe, and it took a tiny bit of damage there. Aim up top of his turret, who don't roll high enough to kill him, and then we finally take a penetrating shot from that M103, and that's the first bit of damage from this game. E-75 is coming around, but I've got plenty of health to cover it, so I decide to kill the M103, and then I can start dancing with this other E-75. We're winning by miles now. My team's going to be here in a minute, so absolutely no dramas here. He hits me, takes out my ammo rack, so I put that in straight away, and we poke one. I was trying to poke one through his side armour there, but I got a broken gun marker and a penetrating ticket, so I don't know if it did bounce off of his gun or I actually broke through his gun. There we go. Cheeky Lorraine turns up and takes the kill. I would have been quite happy killing that one because I am one off of a Top Gun. Just a T-49 left. There he is. Get one into him, damage his ammo rack. But he's going to poke out and break my engine. There he is. And that cheeky Lorraine pushes round and finishes him off just before I can reload and take me Top Gun. So no Top Gun for me there, I'm afraid. But a decent amount of damage done. We had 17 penetration tickets, nearly 93,000 credits, 6,000 experience for 5 kills, and 7,107 damage. Gave us a high caliber Master Ace tanker, still at 1 gun mark, but I'm working on that, and a steel wall for 3,740 damage block there. And we didn't take any damage till the end really, and I was playing slightly carelessly at the end, just to try and pick up that Top Gun. But you saw there, we took down an E-75 quite easily, took down loads of tier 9 heavy tanks, although some of them were flanking shots admittedly, so it wasn't that hard. But then there we saw an opportunity on the map to stop two more tier 9 heavy tanks from flanking round and ruining the game for us, and we went and abused that M103. He had no chance, and then we worked over that another E-75. Well, there you go, tankers. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you can see just how much of a beast E-75 can be now if you play it correctly, and I can fully recommend it. Well, there we go, fellas. Give the video a like if you did, sub if you're not, and I'll catch you on the next one. See you later.